Welcome to the show, everybody. It's time for your weekly OTB. I'm Wes from Thinking Critical, and with me, as always, is my good friend, the podcast aficionado himself. You do video games, you do comic books, you do the Sacktown podcast. Is there anything you don't do, Skip?
I don't sleep very much. that's probably it. Other than that, yeah, full-time dad, full-time media man, and always thinking critical with my good friend Wes.
Absolutely. So you ready to talk about some Marauders? What did you think about this comic?
Yeah, I'm ready to talk about it. To be fully transparent, and shout out to Dane Barrett, just because I love how Dane always gives me a hard time. Dane, I love you too. What I thought about it ultimately was that I was surprised. Like, let it be known, I am not a Gerry Duggans fan, not because I haven't tried, just because most of his stuff just does not resonate with me. And I was very put off by Infinity Wars, the cash grab that CB Cebulski and the Doofuses put together for us earlier this year or last year, whenever it was. But boy, oh boy, I was surprisingly turned around and felt like I'll go as far as to say I enjoyed this book. Not my type of book though, and I'm very interested to see in myself how long I can keep up with it. But Wes, what were some of your first impressions?
I was a bit disappointed, but I still enjoyed it. It was a little too much cornball humor for me.
Right.
But I like the story. I like the cast. I kind of like where it's going. But some of the humor just didn't hit with me at all.
That's pretty much how I was feeling. Like the humor, I was like, I get it. That's funny to someone who's not Skip. But the story, though, is a little bit more in line where I was hoping that they were going, and I was thinking that they were going. So that's the part that I really drew a joy from.
So this is a bit of a different, comic book. Like I said, the tone is very much different than what Jonathan Hickman did in House of X, Powers and 10, even X-Men #1. And, right off the bat, we get a big reveal about Kitty Pryde. She can't enter portals to Krakoa. What do you think is that all about? Is she a mutant?
That was funny. Like I appreciated that was like a beat in there. Like, okay, I get it. Yeah, put something kind of off kilter, or have a reason that she just can't walk in and out. She can phase through stuff. Obviously that's one of the main parts of her power set. But for her to not be able to go through a door where all other mutants go through, I honestly, especially with it being Gerry Duggans, I did not like ponder and pontificate on it all that much. I was like, okay, cool. She can't go through. That's a thing. It's a thing, and I'm not going to treat it more than a thing because this isn't Jonathan Hickman. It's Gerry Duggans, so it's just a thing. That's how I took it. It was almost like a MacGuffin for her to have to go to a ship.
Well, you might be right on there, but I believe there are two parts in this comic book that are absolutely Jonathan Hickman. And one of them is her not being able to go through that portal. I think there's that for a reason, because there's supposed to be a reveal about the character later on. I think she might. I assume that she is a mutant, but there could be some type of curveball where she's been, given her powers maybe by the Shi'ar or some type of Marvel cosmic entity or something like that. But I believe that, and then the Pyro reveal that we get later on, I think that's Jonathan Hickman as well. But I think everything else feels like Gerry Duggans when it comes to Russian and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's interesting. I think it's there to make you think about it. Is she a mutant? I assume that she is. Maybe there's something with her that Krakoa can sense that doesn't want to allow into the island. But not a lot of details on that one yet.
Because very, very basic stuff like, so many people have seen that she can't walk through. Well, just no one goes to talk to Sage and Cypher and be like, why can't Kitty go through? Like, I try not to pick apart stories like that because in all reality, I know it's a fictional world. And if you pick them apart, you can pick any story apart if you really, really want it to. But like, I try to draw the line there because I'm not trying to destroy, things that I connect with. But I can see that being a Hickman thing, and the Pyro thing felt like a Hickman thing too, because it's all about bringing everybody back, in either their most popular iteration or an iteration that is going to be talked about. So for Pyro to come back with his accent and everything, that did feel very Hickman-esque.
First joke, she tries to walk through the portal, she breaks and she steals his, and then she's off to see what with herself. And this kind of all felt like padding to me. What did you think about the part where she was arriving to Krakoa?
Yeah, that part felt very, very Gerry Duggans. She walks in and essentially breaks her nose. Like that felt like something right out of one of his Deadpool. It felt like a Deadpool beat almost from him. So
yes,
I was like, okay, and for this, like, because in most cases, I like people to be locked into the story that they're telling, and I believe some of the best writers, even though I'm not a big fan of Alan Moore, but some of the best writers like an Alan Moore can shift those gears and keep their mind frame locked into that specific character or that specific story. And I almost was like, Gerry Duggan, you're just being Gerry Duggan right now. You're being very Gerry Duggan. But I took it back and I said, you know what? No, he is being Gerry Duggan, but this works within the story. And I understand that with these spinoff books, we don't want, I don't know if anybody else wants, with Hickman as my favorite writer, I still don't want every book to be like a Jonathan Hickman book. I do want them to be different because there are different types of people out there that need different books and different entertainment. But yeah, that moment I was like, Gerry Duggan doing Gerry Duggan things, but it's okay because it's the Marauders. I get it. They're pirates. It's cool.
Yeah, variety is the spice of life, so I agree with you there. And I'm glad you brought up Deadpool because his creative partner on that was Matteo Lolli, the artist on this book as well. And we do have a comment asking how was the art. What did you think of the art? First off,
to me, it was probably, I would say, the best and most consistent thing about the book was the art. It felt very close to RB Silva, actually, and not just RB Silva, his lines, but also even the coloring. And I didn't take a peek at who did the coloring for this book, but those two things brought it closer. And then obviously the graphics and the aesthetic of the pages and the journal entry and the gossip column in the back, I forget, the red diamond or whatever. All of those aesthetics kind of tied it in to Hawks and Pox a little bit better, but especially the line art and the coloring. So I was if this were one of the Thinking Critical reviews, I'd give the art a 4.25 out of 5.
All right. Well, you're a little more generous than I was, but it absolutely does resemble RB Silva's work. And Federico Blee, the colorist, did a good job of emulating the work that Marte Gracia did as well. So it felt inviting. It felt familiar. I didn't think it was quite on the level of Silva or Pepe Larraz, but it was still very good. Not the best art, but this isn't the main book, so you're not expecting to get the top shelf art talent. So the art, in my opinion, it was also solid. It was good. It added to the ambiance of the story and helped it fit into the Jonathan Hickman's X-Men world. And then, eventually Kitty Pryde lands on shore, and the first person she meets is Bobby Drake. And there's a pretty interesting joke here. Did you get it the first time you read it?
Oh, the gay joke?
Yes.
Yeah, of course I got it. It stood out. I mean, even before I had dove into it, I had seen on Twitter that you had posted that specific that specific picture. So yeah, I saw it, and I mean, it was, to me, it was like, this is awkward, only because of their history in the past and everything, and obviously they didn't go down that road, which is fine with me. I would have liked a little bit more of their past to be addressed in that moment, but I mean, they didn't, and it was fine, and they didn't spend too much time on it. They kind of went on from there. So I was just like, okay, cool, cool. Like, it wasn't, to me, it wasn't a bad joke. Like, it was for the moment,
I thought it was
like
good.
it was on par. Yeah, exactly.
And that was one of the things I know, some people are kind of hating it. Like, I wanted, the old Bobby back. Well, we're not getting the old Bobby back, but this isn't Cena Grace. And this is actually a quality gay joke. It was pretty funny. That would go right over the head of almost every child. Like, most kids aren't going to get what that was in reference to. And after I posted on Twitter, I found out most adults didn't get it. There were quite a few people going, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Top end? Like, you don't get it?"
Wow. So, I'm surprised that most people didn't get it. I thought it was, I didn't think it was too over people's heads, but I mean, but that's totally fine. I guess that's kind of how humor works. But no, all in all, like it was a good joke, and it's true. We're getting this is Iceman, Bobby Drake, post Cena Grace, but like you said, this is not Cena Grace writing it, which is why it was so much more. Like, I actually liked Iceman in this book. And I didn't know that I was going to like Iceman after Cena Grace. So, Gerry Duggan, thank you for that.
Yeah, I think he did. It's not quite, Louise Simonson's badass, Bobby Drake, but it's a good version of the character. It's a step up, and, he's still being used as a running gag, which is a bit disappointing. But, at least this joke was good, and some of the other stuff was somewhat humorous. Mm-hmm. All right, so where do we go from there? Oh, the big meeting, the Hellfire Club.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Yeah, it was only a matter of time before that had to happen. That was the part, because part of the issue that I did have with this book was some of the pacing, and that was part of the book that didn't feel too gradual. And not that every part of a story needs to feel gradual, but I very much felt like we just got like kind of pushed over into like, hey, come over here. We have to do this thing where we have these two characters, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Hey, Emma Frost, yeah. I did like the fact that there was some comedic transparency in the fact that Kitty was not the first to be chosen, or not to be chosen, but to be asked to head up this part of their front, which wasn't named yet in the book. So I did like that part. And overall, actually, their dialogue, if we get down to the actual dialogue itself, wasn't bad at all. I would say it was better than passable. I would even go as far as to say it was good. So the scene itself, isolated, I felt like was a good scene. How we got to the scene is what I felt like was a little kind of clumsy. What'd you think, Wes?
It was a bit sudden. All of a sudden, she's sitting there, and Emma Frost like enters her mind, and they're having a telepathic conversation. But you don't want to just have two people in two different frames, so she's there as a hologram. Okay, and they have a pretty good conversation. Yes, we learned that she's not the first choice. We know that Aurora was the first choice. We learned in some of the white pages that weren't all that interesting in this book, but not even going to talk about that really. And then Kitty doesn't want to take the job, and then Emma is quite insistent on her not being Kitty anymore. She wants her to go by Kate. Is that a specific reason for that, or do you think she just wants to grow up?
Yeah, I think it's just a kind of a way to, and not a bad way. There's worse ways to kind of progress a character, but if Gerry Duggan is going to, have any character focus outside of just the humor, and he wants to progress the character, this is like kind of like an obvious way. I like the name Kitty Pryde. I don't see what the big deal is. I don't see why you can't be called that. I know older ladies that their name is Catherine and they still go by Kitty. Most of the time, if it's a professional thing, then they'll go by, Kate or or Catherine or Kathy, which is popular. But even though they're doing business, this is still very much like a the reason for it and all of everything surrounding it is very informal. If they can call Bobby still and not call him Robert, why can't they call Catherine Kitty? But for Gerry Duggan, and again, I don't want to pick apart it too much. I'm liking Gerry Duggan. I don't want to pick it apart so much that I start not liking him again. Gerry Duggan, the smallest clap for you and the battle for the name Kate. That's fine. What'd you think, Wes?
It was all right. I think it's just it's showing character progression. She's moving on to another stage in her life. Makes sense to me. I think it was just like a small like symbolic gesture. The more interesting part of this, of course, is the Red Queen. It's laid on pretty thick here at the end. I wasn't totally enamored how the Red Queen name was brought up in the conversation, and she essentially is being given the nickname the Red Queen. What did you think about that part of the conversation?
That was one of the parts that I really didn't like, and it was that definitely felt definitely felt forced to me, but it felt forced. But again, kind of the cleverness of it is the person that it's coming from. Emma Frost being queendom minded, if you will, and all of her character, it makes sense. And I will say this as well. I'll give Gerry Duggan another thing. She's very much trying to, like, it took a lot of coercing and convincing, and that pitch that she threw at Kitty Pryde, I mean, my gosh, she put some extra cheese on that thing, didn't she? So, although to me, again, it still feels a little clunky and forced. The person that it is coming from, it's not outside of their character to make propositions and pushes like that. So, all right, I guess. I'll say it like this. If the story continues at this pace or at this quality or even gets better, it's something that I can forgive. What about you, Wes? How did you feel about that?
I thought it was laid on a little bit thick, but all in all, the conversation is really important. It basically establishes the mission of what the Marauders are going to do. It's to exfil mutants out of hostile countries, and also to deal in black markets with the Krakoan drugs. It establishes why they're picking Kitty Pryde. She's not their first choice, but they want a reliable, dependable leader. And she can't stay on the island anyway because she can't travel through the portals. So it's a bonus for everyone around. And it gives her motivation. It shows Emma's part in this, and the Hellfire Trading Company's part in all this. So I think the conversation was really important. It was good to get that part out of the way instead of dragging it on. Let's get this part. Let's get that exposition and kind of get on with the story. And then we get back to some more Gerry Duggan humor as Iceman sees a Krakoan gate that's not being used, decides he needs to go in and investigate while he's eating a chicken leg or something, and immediately gets zapped by low rent Iron Man, and he's in his tidy whities.
Yeah, Gerry Duggan humor for you. It felt almost Three Stooges-esque with that type of humor. And yeah, again, and those are the parts where I'm like, I get it. Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. I'm not laughing. It's funny. It's comical. Someone's gonna like this. Someone likes this. It's not me who likes this, but someone likes this, and that's fine. Again, it wasn't so atrocious that I couldn't forgive it, but those are just the parts of the book that I put up with that like aren't for me. I don't need that type of humor, in the book. But when humor is put in to have a change of pace, kind of like Hickman did, like people didn't necessarily love what they saw from Sinister. Yep, exactly, Sinister. But I felt like the timing of the humor was perfect because we just got out of a really heavy book, with some serious stakes. And this is just Gerry Duggan doing Gerry Duggan things, and sure. There you go, Gerry Duggan. Wes, please.
I'm not so enamored with the first place to have to go being Russia. Like, Russia's in the news. Could have picked something more interesting. I guess it's topical, so it doesn't feel very clever or a good choice. But whatever. Taiwan's also in this issue. I wanted, like, how did he guess that was going to happen? But so, Bobby returns and he finds Kitty Pryde drunk, and she decides she's going to lead a team. She starts putting her small team together. It's going to be Bobby. It's going to be Storm. And then we get the best part of the comic. And shockingly, it's only two. Well, do you want to talk about Bishop first?
Yeah, we could talk about Bishop. That was actually one of the things. Like, if Gerry Duggan gets his clever stamp for the day, his clever star. I feel like it was how Bishop got introduced. In the immortal words of Quicksilver, I didn't see that, but you didn't see that coming. I didn't see it coming, and it was nice. And yeah, Gerry Duggan. I don't know if he's drinking some of what Jonathan Hickman is selling via these synthesized Krakoan plants, but he saw the future. I guess with what's going on with Taiwan. So I did enjoy that part, and I am interested. I'm probably more interested in where that's going than any other subplot in the book. But yeah, that was Bishop in. But unless you want to speak about Bishop, where were we going, Wes? Where were we going?
No, that was a fine cameo. But we got to get to the best part of the story, man. So Kitty's on the boat that she stole. She's there with Storm and Iceman, and Pyro comes out. He's a stowaway. He laid down for a nap, and he wakes up and they're underway, and they're out on the seas heading to Krakoa. And so he starts speaking in jargon, and Iceman is freaked out. And he's like, "You have your original accent. You're the original Pyro." And then we get the realization that Pyro was one of the first mutants that was resurrected. And I gotta read some of this. Turns out I was one of the first mutants to be resurrected. I felt so special until I realized they used me as a lab rat, and his face is just totally despondent. And I wanted so much more of this than anything else in the story, because this is the first mutant that we know that wasn't immediately resurrected upon dying. The X-Men that went and destroyed the Mother Mold, they were immediately brought back, assuming that their personalities and their memories were immediately restored to them. So there's not a big time gap, but it appears from here that he's been restored to a much earlier version of himself. And that's got to cause a lot of conflict, a lot of different relationship issues with people. They're probably going to ask him about things he doesn't know existed. And as far as he's concerned, he never experienced them. So that's not even something he ever did. And I find that part to be completely fascinating. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean that was it's funny because as excited as I got, like excited as you are, and the places that your mind started going, I started going there, and I was like, not so fast there, Happy Skippy. This ain't Jonathan Hickman. This is Gerry Duggan. So I was like, yes, that's what I want. And then I realized who was feeding it to me, and I was like, oh, I don't even know if this book is gonna stick around long enough for me to get that. Or if Gerry Duggan even cares enough to go down that road.
I'm assuming it's being introduced because these conflicts are going to be explored. Pyro is a part of the team. Iceman was totally freaked out. Made me think, were they boyfriends? Like, did he forget about a relationship they had? That would really freak me out. If all of a sudden my ex was here and she didn't remember me because she never even lived our experiences, those are like enormous chasms that could come between people. But really, the most interesting part is the saying that he was used as a lab rat. Is he saying that, is that the resurrection process itself, because he was one of the first ones? Or did Charles and other mutants experiment on him when he returned? Was the first time they returned him during the resurrection process a success? I remember seeing Alien Resurrection, and I remember when the main antagonist of Alien,
not coming to me right now.
Lady, she sees this, like the 8 versions of herself that they try to resurrect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'll of course remember it as soon as it's over, and I remember it freaking her out so much when she saw all the times they tried to bring her back.
Right?
Are there times they try to bring Pyro back that weren't successful? Does he know about that? What else did they do to him?
I mean, he doesn't even know if he's the only Pyro that's still around right now. And I'm sure chat will help us out with the antagonist of of that Alien movie. But I mean, yeah, all of those things are the thing. That's where my mind started to go before I started to, in the immortal words or in the immortal title of my favorite comedy show ever. I had to curb my enthusiasm real quick because I don't even know if they're going to take us down that road. But this is why we have things like OTB, where if Gerry Duggan ain't going to do it for us, we can do it ourselves and make up headcanon. So yeah, look, I can talk about some of where my mind started to go. One, yeah, like, is he even the only version? Two, what about all the things that his other version did? Like you said, that he didn't even know that he did. Three, how does he know that everything is cool now? If they brought him back from that old backup, like, well, one, when did they even back up that version? See, like, I could, like, that, when did they even get the old Pyro version?
I'm assuming it's Genosha.
Which okay, which that would be the only thing that I can think of that would fill it in and make sense. And then the other thing is, like, yeah, he felt despondent. What about his rights? Like, what if he wanted to stay dead? What if he didn't want to come back? He didn't even have a choice in the matter. Like, so like, these are the things that start to come up, and and people's rights, the right to live, and then the right to die. We can go to some Kevorkian places with all this, but I think some of the stuff, in order for me to not be so, have such a wide breadth with this thing, some of the things I think I might have to show up on the next Comic Book Aficionados, where we have a little bit more time. But in this case, yeah, my mind definitely started going down that path, and they're obviously going to bring that up, because as they go to different places, we know the sheer destruction that Pyro has caused all around the world. And with him being one of the Marauders, they're like, oh, okay, you sent these guys in to get people. You definitely didn't send your best people, or the people with the cleanest records. So even less of a reason for us to hand over these mutants to you, and even more of a reason to fight against you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and one more question, Wes. Pyro's from Australia? Is that the accent?
I'm not exactly sure. It sounded like it was like Ireland to me, but there is a relationship between. Okay, but I might be wrong.
Okay,
I'm sure the chat's going to fix me up right now.
That's what they're there for. Thank you, chat.
So once that part is done, and like I said, we could talk about on its own just the sheer implications of those two panels. Like, went way beyond this comic book, and they finally arrive in Russia. Low rent Iron Man is waiting on the portal for the mutants to come through, because he knows he zapped one of them, and they come from the flank. They weren't expecting a seaside assault, and finally the Marauders are in action, and they start wailing on these Russians. What did you think about this part? It's basically the Kitty Pryde show, right?
Yeah, this is one of my least favorite parts of the whole book. And it's funny, for once I started to feel and not that I didn't understand before, but I actually started to feel like, yeah, these really don't feel like the good guys. Like, they really don't. And I had to remember that, like, oh yeah, that's right. Well, they are going and getting mutants out of places that they're that nation won't let them get out of. So I was like, okay, that's right. They they're trying to liberate people, and liberation is messy. When things aren't right, when a government is in place and it's not proper, revolution and revolting is messy. And even, and everybody has blood on their hands, even the people that are fighting for the right thing. So that was a part, and that wasn't that's what made that my least favorite part. What made it my least favorite part really was kind of just some of the violence. And this is just a personal thing. I'm more of a person who likes King Kirby style action and not so much violence. So a lot of the blood and her phasing the weapon through people and then like letting it go, and now all of a sudden these dudes got AR-15s inside of their bodies and they're leaking, and even how she like went inside of the tank, and maybe the sequence of art I just didn't keep up with enough, and maybe you can explain this to me, but I saw her go inside of it, and they literally said, like, don't kill human, like, don't kill men, and she went inside of the tank and then grabbed homeboy and then pulled his pins and started counting and then phased back out, and I thought she was going to leave him in there to explode the tank. Those were smoke grenades. What were you saying?
I assume those were smoke grenades because when the tank driver comes out, he's all like holding his mouth like he's coughing.
Okay.
But
So
I'm with you on the gun in the leg.
She know that. Like, how did she know that in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So it was stuff like that where it's like Gerry Duggan is going to be more focused on probably the action and the powers, and not so much, like explaining that part. But I don't know, that again, that could be me picking it apart. I could pick it apart forever until there's no reason to even like this comic book, and I did overall like it. But Wes, what did you think about this section?
I actually thought it was good. I didn't like when she put the gun in the guy's legs. I thought that was a bit much. It's kind of gross. But otherwise, I think they showed her in action. She was phasing out and in and using her powers all really well. And they made her seem very powerful. And, if you're going to be the captain of the Marauders, you should be a great warrior. You should be a good fighter. And, she even picked up a broadsword along the way. So I thought it was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely didn't like the gun in the leg thing. But, basically nobody else got any shine. And that's almost the whole book. This is like the Kitty Pryde book. There's a couple of jokes with Iceman. Storm, says she'll join her and doesn't like Emma Frost. And then Pyro has like the most important page, and then you don't ever hear from him again. So, if the intention of this book was to establish Kitty Pryde as the captain of the Marauders, as a very powerful warrior, I think it was effective, and I think they did a pretty good job. And this action sequence, I think, played a large part in that. And I think the artist did a pretty good job, showcasing her phasing abilities.
Yeah, opinion. Absolutely. I felt like how they did show off the powers was awesome. And overall, like, even though it was my least favorite part, it still wasn't a bad part. I like the action. It was good. We needed to see some action. And yeah, I do agree. It would have been nice to see some other people's powers. But I think if they take the approach like, hey, we have to establish her as the leader, and the leader, kind of has to be, if not the most cutthroat, like one of the most cutthroat. Because remember, they're pirates. So I didn't think that anything that they showed there was off brand at all. It all kind of, made sense in where they're trying to go. And it did feel a little brutal for Kitty to me. But overall, just for me personally, I'm not like if no one in the chat knows this, I didn't watch all of Game of Thrones. I watched like 3 episodes and I couldn't get over the gratuitous violence and the gratuitous sex. I just couldn't. Like you can imply to me and you can even show a little bit, but I'm not a person that really likes self-indulgence or indulgences in those areas. I will indulge in story, I will indulge in character, I'll indulge in dialogue. That's where I like to indulge, but my indulgences aren't in violence and sex. You can imply them and I'm fine with them and all that stuff, but when it starts to go too far, that's when, like, to me personally, that's when I'm like, But they needed to show that she was badass, and they showed that she was badass. And I would like to see them kind of establish her, and then if every other issue, maybe in the first trade, if every other issue is kind of peeking in a little bit more and a little bit more of a character study for each person, and then and then we set up what it's really going to be past that, and then the next trade, everybody's introduced, we know them all well, we know how they are now in this continuity, and then we leap in. I think that would be really, really smart of Gerry Duggan, but I'm not going to give him that credit until he turns in his homework.
I have read his interview, and the next 3 to 4 issues are going to concentrate on establishing the new villains, the big bads for Marauders. And I think it's going to be great.
Okay, doesn't sound bad.
I like villains.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's Namor and maybe some of the we'll see how that goes. Kind of to end off, in my opinion, this is the worst page of the entire comic book. It's Kitty Pryde pointing at the reader and saying, if you're a mutant and can't get to Krakoa, then the Marauders will bring you home, and she names the team. This was total cornball, cheeseball. Kind of fits the tone of the book, but I didn't like this at all. If this was supposed to establish her as looking cool, this is a major fail in my opinion. The battle scenes did that much better. Just kind of picky on my part. What did you think about the big panel where she named the team?
This is where it's parts like this that it reminds me of Bendis in this way. Everybody knows Brian Michael Bendis is my favorite writer. There's a special little place at the bottom of my heart for Brian Michael Bendis. I'm joking. He's not. He's my least favorite writer. But it's parts like this where it's like, okay, writer, we know you want to write screenplays. We know you do. We know that the comic book money is not quite what the screenplay money could be. We get it. But this is a scene for cinema. This is not a way that you should execute a comic book. Because my whole thing is, I saw it for what Gerry Duggans tried to make it. It's that whole blah, 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 blah. And we'll come get you. And then the camera zooms in a really cheesy, overt way. And it's like, but yeah, okay, that's a joke. That works in cinema. Got it. Yeah. But this ain't cinema, homie. This is a comic book. So instead of coming off like cheesy funny, you just come off cheesy corny. That's how.
Yeah, it's kind of like. I didn't like the way that ended. There's a couple more pages where they establish that the team aren't going back through the portal. They're going to travel back to Krakoa via ship and see where kind of trouble they get into along the way. And Storm doesn't like Emma Frost, but that kind of stuff felt tacked on at the end. So my overall assessment on this comic book is that it's actually a lot of fun. It's completely different than X-Men and House of X Powers of 10. It feels different. I think that's I think that's by design. It's meant to be a fun story. There's too much humor. I hope they dial it back a little bit. But I think Duggan did a good job planting some seeds on cool places this can go. I can't wait for Bishop to actually join the team and maybe the numbers expand out a bit. But I think this was a success. It was a fun book. I think most people would enjoy this. Not quite as good as X-Men #1, but I know a lot of people felt that this was better. What did you think about the book overall?
Overall, it was likable. I'm definitely gonna, because this was one book that I was like, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it to issue #2. I'm definitely gonna read issue #2, and I'm gonna give it a chance. And I agree with Dane Barrett in the chat. This was obviously a lot more fun than X-Men #1. But I guess that's where I differ. I'm not someone who needs. I'm I'm the opposite of Kawhi. I'm not a fun guy. I'm a funny guy, and I know when to be funny. I can be funny, and I'm very entertaining. But I probably am more than anything like a very serious kind of passion burning, cerebral type person. So I want the cerebral books. I want the character studies. I want the internal conflict. I want the things that aren't so easy to resolve. I'm just not. If it's OG stuff, then yeah, give me the Superman going in and punching people if it's simple. But if it's going to be modern in it and we're going to have things be layered and textured and complex, then give me the layered, textured, and complex, and just pace it well for me. So I enjoyed X-Men #1 a lot more than I enjoyed this. And I understood what X-Men #1 was trying to do and what it was setting up. And I understood how it followed Claremont beats very closely. And I'm someone who really, 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 really loves Chris Claremont and his writing. And I really, really love Jim Starlin. I like that kind of writing. So for me, this was good. I'm going to read #2 for sure. And I'll even go as far as to say I'm looking forward to Marauders #2. Wes, what were your impressions of this?
Well, I think it would get very boring if the entire Dawn of X storylines felt like Jonathan Hickman was writing them.
I agree.
I'm glad it feels a little bit different. We need some different things. I think, Brian Hill's going to have a cool vibe for Fallen Angels. I think Ed Brisson, is going to bring his own spin to New Mutants. It'll probably be more along the lines of Hickman. And I can't wait to read Ben Percy. So, like I said, I think this was a success. I think Marvel will be very happy with it. And I think most of the people that read that, even if they didn't think it was exactly what they expected, like I said, I was disappointed. By the time we got here, I was really excited after, the way things lined up. Even being a little bit disappointed, I did enjoy it, and I will definitely be coming back. And I can't wait for the next issue. I think it's only going to get better.
I hope it's only going to get better. I hope. I really, really hope, because I'm not someone who, even when I don't like things or like Joker movie, I'm like, I'm not going to see that. I have no intentions of ever watching that movie. I still don't want it to fail. Like, I want it to do well because, like I said, if that movie does well, then maybe another movie that's a little more fringe than I do want will get greenlit if it has success. So it's the same for this Marauders book. Like, this book was not my favorite book. And when you have so many titles, you can't have them all be just like the same person. It has to have different personality in each book. Otherwise, you're right, it will get stale. So I'm happy that it's different, and I'm hopeful that it is successful, because maybe they will greenlight more books that will be more of the variety that I like. And there's still so many that we haven't read yet. We got New Mutants coming, which from me checking out the preview looks like one I'm going to stay interested in. We'll see. I'm not the biggest fan of Brisson. We'll see how that goes. We got Fallen Angels, and that's probably the title more than any other one that I'm really, really interested in reading, because I like the way that Brian Hill writes, and I like where he goes. And I also like that team of characters and everything that he said in this interview, especially with his interview with Perch, everything that he said of how these characters feel in the environment that they're in, and them being warriors. I love warriors. So I'm all about that.
Live for the show, and thank you very much. You followed on the replay. If you want to help support the channel, we do have a coffee page that is going to be in the description, and there should be a link up in the video right now on the replay. Thank you all so much for joining us. Skip, you have anything to say before we head out?
No, just if you guys are looking for a comfortable gaming chair or just a desk chair, please consider Taboo Ohana. You see the little symbol over there. In the top right corner. They're a sponsor of ours and everything I'm involved with and I do. And they're an awesome company run by veterans with a heart for orphans and an orphans ministry, and they really help out. So you get a 40%, or excuse me, not 40%. Dang, that's a huge discount, but you get $40 off with my discount, because I've forfeited my commissions so that goes to the orphans. I've got kids, and I can't imagine them not having a family or, a consistent home, so being that people dedicate themselves to helping out kids in that position, I had to get on board with them. So you can get a comfy chair and then feel good about where the money goes if you're looking for it. Other than that, just stay locked in to Thinking Critical. We got all sorts of stuff going on. We got a Discord that just launched, which that has been very, very fun. Tons of different rooms in there, everything from film to comics to TV shows. We got a writer's room because, a bunch of us are writers, and, we like to fill in that. So, consider that. And if you do contribute to us and help out the show via coffee, there are different roles and ranks that you can get that give additional privileges within the Discord. So please consider it. And thanks for always just showing up and being a part of the conversation in the chat.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. And Skip and I will be live right here tomorrow for OTB. Thanks a lot, guys. Or not OTB, Geekspan. Later, guys.